Picture this. It is 11:47 at night. Your phone screen is the only light in the room. You have had a long day, the kind of day that doesn't quite hurt in one specific place, it just weighs on everything. You open an app, you find something, a jacket, a pair of shoes, a course you will probably never finish. Your finger hovers over the checkout button, and somewhere in the back of your mind, a very clear and honest voice says, "You cannot afford this right now." And then you buy it anyway. This is not about stupidity. This is not about poor impulse control or some generational character flaw. The people who do this, and there are far more of them than financial culture would like to admit, are often acutely aware of exactly what they are doing. That word, intentionally, is the most important word in the conversation, because when someone does something they know is financially harmful and does it anyway, that is not a lapse in logic. That is a signal. The purchase is a behavior, but it is also a language, and what it is trying to say is far more interesting than what it costs. What you are about to hear is not financial advice. It is not a lecture on budgeting. It is an honest, research-backed look at what is actually happening inside the human brain, the human nervous system, and the human psyche when someone chooses, with full awareness, to spend money they do not have. If any part of that resonates with you, keep watching, because there is a reason it does. Before we can talk about psychology, we need to talk about biology, because a lot of what we interpret as a choice is, neurologically speaking, a chemical event that has already been decided before conscious reasoning even gets a seat at the table. In 2007, neuroscientist Brian Knudsen at Stanford University published a landmark fMRI study in the journal Neuron titled Neural Predictors of Purchases. What his team found fundamentally reframes how we understand shopping behavior. Using brain imaging technology, Knudsen and colleagues identified that it is not the act of owning or consuming a product that triggers the brain's reward circuitry, it is the anticipation of it. The dopamine spike, that surge of neurological pleasure associated with reward, fires most intensely in the nucleus accumbens, the brain's primary reward center, in the moments before a purchase is confirmed. The moment of clicking Buy Now, the moment of searching, the moment of adding to cart. This is a critical distinction. Dopamine is not really a pleasure chemical in the way popular science describes it. As neuroscientist Kent Berridge's research has long established, dopamine is more accurately a wanted chemical. It drives desire, craving, and the pursuit of reward, not the satisfaction of it. What this means practically is that the brain is most lit up and most alive in the anticipatory phase of spending, waiting for the package, the browsing, the moment right before checkout. By the time the item arrives, the neurological event is already largely over. Ask anyone who has done a lot of online shopping during a particularly low period in their life, and they will describe a feeling that is almost impossible to explain to someone who has not experienced it. The package arrives. You open it, and for a moment, maybe a few seconds, it feels like something. Then the room goes quiet again, and you are exactly where you were before, except now you have a new item and slightly more financial anxiety than you did yesterday. This is not a personal failing, it is neurologically predictable. The dopamine anticipation loop, once completed, does not replenish automatically. The brain registers the reward as received, and the signal fades. What follows is what researchers sometimes refer to as reward prediction error, a kind of neurological disappointment when the actual reward does not match the intensity of what was anticipated. In the context of compulsive or distress-driven shopping, this gap between anticipation and reality is precisely what keeps the cycle spinning, because the solution the brain reaches for, almost immediately, is another hit of anticipation, another search, another add to cart, another checkout. This is the mechanism behind what many psychologists now describe in the context of compulsive buying disorder. A 2016 meta-analysis by Aniko Meraz and colleagues, published in the journal Addiction, reviewed data from over 10,000 participants and found a pooled prevalence of compulsive buying behavior in the adult population of approximately 5%, a figure consistent with the earlier Stanford estimate that more than 1 in 20 American adults struggles with this pattern. And these are the clinical cases. The broader population of people caught in distress-driven, emotionally motivated spending is considerably larger. Here is the part that most financial commentators get completely wrong. They look at a young person drowning in credit card debt from unnecessary purchases, and they say that person needs better financial literacy. And while financial education matters, it misses something fundamental. It assumes the behavior is rooted in ignorance, but what if it's rooted in something closer to a very coherent, if devastating, logic? The term doom spending emerged in popular discourse around 2023 and has since been validated by behavioral economists and psychologists as a genuinely meaningful psychological category. A 2024 Bankrate analysis found that nearly 44% of American credit card holders were carrying debt from month to month, with younger generations disproportionately represented. According to data referenced by NBC and Yahoo Finance in late 2024, approximately 37% of Gen Z and 39% of millennials reported engaging in doom spending behavior. A McKinsey analysis from December 2024 described it as buying goods and services as a way of coping with pessimism about the economy, politics, or other systemic concerns. What makes doom spending psychologically coherent and psychologically dangerous is its internal logic. If you have watched housing prices escalate beyond your lifetime earning potential, if you have done the math and understood that no realistic savings rate will bridge that gap, the choice to save begins to feel not virtuous, but meaningless. The money you don't spend on yourself today does not automatically become a future house. It just sits there, slowly eroded by inflation, while the gap between where you are and where you hoped to be stays exactly the same. In that psychological landscape, spending becomes not irresponsibility, but protest, not recklessness, but grief. Not all of this spending is rooted in macroeconomic despair. For a significant portion of people, the pattern has a much older origin story, one that begins long before credit cards, long before social media, in the particular silence of a childhood home where money was always a source of tension, scarcity, or shame. In their 2013 book, Scarcity: Why Having Too Little Means So Much, Harvard behavioral economist Sendhil Mullainathan and Princeton psychologist Eldar Shafir demonstrated through rigorous research that the experience of scarcity, not just material scarcity, but the psychological state of not having enough, fundamentally alters cognition. It narrows mental bandwidth. It makes people hyper-focused on immediate needs while simultaneously impairing long-term planning. The experience of growing up in financial scarcity does not simply end when the financial circumstances change. It becomes encoded in the nervous system as a baseline orientation toward the world. The American Psychological Association's research, published in 2014, demonstrated that growing up poor directly influences an individual's sense of control and increases the likelihood of impulsive decision-making in adulthood. When children are consistently told no, when they watch parents argue over bills, when they feel the quiet humiliation of not having what their peers have, they internalize a belief that resources are inherently unstable and that deprivation is their natural state. When those children grow up and get their first paycheck or their first line of credit, the psychological pendulum swings hard in the opposite direction. The adult brain reaches for everything the childhood self was denied. The purchase is not really the product on the label, it's the experience of finally being allowed to say yes. There's another layer to this architecture that is less about the past and more about the present, specifically about the social world and the primal terror of not belonging to it. In 1988, cultural anthropologist Grant McCracken coined the term the Diderot effect, named after the French philosopher Diderot, who wrote an essay describing how receiving a new scarlet dressing gown triggered a cascade of purchases to match it, leaving him surrounded by luxury he didn't want and debt he hadn't anticipated. McCracken's insight was that human beings have an innate drive toward what he called consumption constellations, coherent collections of objects that together communicate a unified identity and social position. When one element of that constellation is upgraded, the others begin to feel inadequate. The single purchase creates an internal dissonance that can only be resolved by more purchasing. But there's an evolutionary dimension here that goes even deeper. Human beings are social animals whose survival for hundreds of thousands of years depended entirely on membership in a group. Ostracism was not an embarrassment, it was a death sentence. The neuroscientist Matthew Lieberman, in his research on social pain, has demonstrated that social exclusion activates the same neural regions as physical pain. When someone puts a dinner on a credit card to keep up with higher-earning friends, or buys a designer item to signal membership in a perceived social class, they are not being vain. They are responding to a survival circuit that is millions of years old, running its ancient code through a modern credit economy. The item is not the point. Belonging is the point. The purchase is simply the price of admission. It would be convenient to believe that overspending is a timeless human weakness, that every generation has done it and every generation has been judged for it. And while the underlying psychological mechanisms are indeed universal, the specific cultural and economic context in which millennials and Gen Z are operating is genuinely without modern precedent.
Don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the psychology of how we live and heal.